Good morning or afternoon, and welcome to Timer Tip Tuesday. Just a quick reminder that this webinar is being recorded, and you'll get a copy of the webinar and the slides afterwards. As always, we have folks on the back end. Today we've got James Harris and Matt Avery answering your questions. So if you haven't used GoToWebinar before, in the little panel there is a question option. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to ask them there. Otherwise, we will have a Q&A session at the end. All right, today we're talking about dynamic bib assignment. We've got turkey trots just around the corner, which is a really big time of year for doing dynamic bib assignment. And now is maybe late, maybe early, depending on your race, but around the time that you might want to be talking to your race directors about how you are doing bib assignment for that race and others. So on the agenda today, what is dynamic bib assignment, QR codes, and then dynamically assigning bibs using either web check-in or race day check-in, what a quick check-in looks like, some best practices, and some question time. All right, what is dynamic bib assignment and why should you use it? Dynamic bib assignment is the method of assigning bibs as participants walk up to be checked in rather than pre-assigning them, which is the more traditional method. Dynamically assigning bibs means most, if not all, bibs are assigned at the time a participant checks in as participants pick them up. This saves on overhead. You're not prepping as many bibs. You're not wasting as many tags. You're not spending as much time, effort, and money labeling and putting staff hours into preparing the bibs and sequences. It also offers a much more efficient check-in process and requires less volunteers. It does this by, if you had a traditional packet pickup where you had a sign saying, A through D here, E through F there, and breaking up the alphabet into letters like that, you may have instances where one line would have no people in it and the other line would have 4 or 5 people in it. And if you're using dynamic instead, just each person can go to each line and get processed much more quickly. I heard really good advice once that was people are okay with standing in lines as long as those lines are moving, and dynamic assignment really helps move lines. Pre-assigned, which is the more traditional method, bibs are assigned ahead of time via spreadsheet, and that often goes hand in hand with labeling the bibs and preparing packets. It does require a lot of preparation and a lot of time, plus those labels aren't necessarily inexpensive. In terms of another contrast between the two, if one person grabs the wrong packet in a pre-assigned situation, then 2 people's bibs are screwed up. If someone grabs the wrong bib via dynamic, there's some safeguards in place that prevent that, but also it's not affecting 2 participants the same way. Some frequently asked questions. Can I still pre-assign bibs for participants? Absolutely. You can always pre-assign participants and dynamically assign bibs as well. It's a pretty common thing if you have maybe a set for pacers, maybe a set for elites and different ranges like that. How do you indicate what giveaway someone is receiving? Giveaways can be noted on the back of the bib, either just handwriting a shirt size there or by using the label printer function in the check-in app. A lot of people are very anxious the first time that they move to dynamic, worrying that it creates more mistakes. And actually, if you follow the guidelines in this webinar and in the best practices, it really puts a lot of safeguards in place that mitigate those errors. It just does still require, training and oversight, but any situation where you're relying heavily on volunteers is going to require those two. This also gives you some tools to help keep everything between the ditches. If you don't want to bring more equipment like tablets to assign bibs, the check-in app is available in the Google Play and Apple stores. and volunteers can use their own phones to assign bibs. And then how does the timer, you know what the bib assignments are? Well, bib assignments from race day check-in or from the web check-in are automatically synced with the database and RunSignup. So you'll always have the most up-to-date assignment and information on the RunSignup platform. If you're using race day scoring, the bidirectional sync takes this a step further and brings that all into your scoring software. If you are in a situation where there's less reliable internet, the check-in app does hold the database locally, and once it has service, will sync back up with the main database there. Some examples of successful dynamic assignment races. These are all links that you can check out. The main takeaway here is that those races range in size and application, but one of them is a 13,000 person race, and these other stats I think are really worth taking to heart. That in 2023, 33% of all races use the race day check-in app, and 39% of all participants were checked in using this app. That doesn't necessarily mean all dynamic, but it's a pretty strong indicator that dynamic is being used more and more heavily. And larger events are moving to dynamic because of those reasons that we talked about a little bit earlier, with less volunteer needs, with more efficiency, and with less overhead. So how do you drive dynamic assignment? QR codes are your best friend for doing dynamic assignment. A QR code is a machine readable code consisting of an array of black and white squares, typically used for storing URLs or other information for reading by a camera on a smartphone. In the case of what we're talking about here, the QR code is either going to indicate the bib number or the participant's registration ID. Another really nice tip here is if you're using the check-in app, you can flip those devices over to the results kiosk mode and also use that. So you're not just putting away your devices at the end of packet pickup. You have a whole new life for them after the race that's creating engagement for your participants. So getting the QR code for the participants with that registration ID, we use the replacement tag that you see there on the screen. Pre-race emails can include this and automatically generate it for each of the participants. Just a reminder that pre-race emails should be set as transactional emails, not marketing emails. And also we have a template built out for this. This screenshot here is actually from that template. And the GIFs and animations you'll see later also come from that template. QR codes for bibs. Most bib printers will set this up for you, and you just tell them, hey, I want a QR code that matches the bib numbers put on here. There may be an increase in cost depending on your printer and what you're doing, where you're putting that QR code, but ultimately you would save money by printing less bibs. If you're in a race that you know is going to have a 15% no-show rate, you can probably get away with ordering maybe 8 to 10% less bibs. If you're not sure about this stuff, ask your timer if you're a race director, ask another timer if you're a timer, ask your bib printer just to verify these things. But it's a really good practice to have a QR code on your bib, because scanning a QR code is much faster than typing it in, and it's much more accurate. The stat that we're using here is if you're using QR codes for the registration ID and for the bib assignment, you can be assigning bibs in as little as 6 seconds consistently. So for doing the dynamic check-in on RunSignup, for actually assigning these bibs that ties the participant information to the bib and chip that you're working with, one way to do that is web check-in, which would be used if you have laptops. Here is a somewhat blurry GIF of what that looks like. But functionally, you're looking up a participant, clicking assign bib and check in, and then putting in a bib number there. Down below on this is the navigation for getting to web check-in. If this is your first time doing this or you haven't done this before, just a reminder, and I'll say this several more times, you probably want to set up bib validation. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But as you can see on the check-in screen on RunSignup, we have 3 different routes you can go here. Check-in stats is just the overall stats. Who's checked in, who's not checked in, the amounts of people checked in. That's a really useful thing for race directors to look at, for timers to look at, to see what the volume is going to be for day of. Web check-in is the one that we're discussing right now, and then mobile check-in is there on the left. When should you use check-in? If you have a lot of computers that aren't able to run the check-in app, they can still be used for dynamic assignment, and you can do that with the web check-in. Generally, the check-in app is the recommended option, but sometimes you have races that aren't comfortable with having volunteers use their phones, or that have a fleet of computers that they want put to use. So this is a good option there. And there's a couple different ways you can set it up. First thing you can do is you can customize what you see in both the columns on the search page, as well as what information is displayed on the pop-up screen. It's also possible to customize what can or cannot be edited by people performing these actions. This can be found on the web check-in page under the gear there. Do keep in mind what you want to allow volunteers or staffs to edit, or even what you want them to see when doing this. It's a little easier on the web check-in side to overshow information. So another strong point that I'll reiterate a few times here is you should be checking and testing your workflow. Another option is the remote link for web check-in. Setting up a remote link allows computers to use web check-in without having access to the race and run sign up. This might be the preferred method if you are leaving out a number of laptops. Just a quick note here is that you'll be logged out of RunSignup if you click on this link. So if you're testing it, use a different browser or a private window. A new link will be created if you do edit anything after you've already set it up. So keep that in mind as you kind of scale up and deploy your solution for this. There's also the safe mode for web check-in. It's similar to the remote link. And again, keep in mind that you'll be logged out once this is enabled. I keep saying that because it is a very popular thing for people to click around and log themselves out and then not be able to get back to where they wanted to be because they forgot their password, or because their password's saved, but it's not their computer, so on and so forth. The preferred method, and what I would recommend the most, would be using the race day check-in app to dynamically assign bibs. So again, this is another thing that's going to come up a lot. The first thing you need to do, most important thing that you need to do for setting up the check-in app, is making sure that you have a password and a date range set up for check-in. If you don't set this up, the race that you're working with won't show up in the check-in app. I generally recommend enabling check-in kind of whenever, unless you're giving that password out to someone. It's not like they're going to be able to get in and do anything. So set that early enough that you have a window that you can actually test in. Disabling check-in, I generally recommend disabling check-in 30 minutes after the last gun goes off for your race. If you set it right at race start, you're gonna have to change stuff or work around your setup to check in someone who shows up late. So always leave a little bit of grace on both sides of that window. It's not gonna hurt anything to do that. But again, you need to set this up. Another reminder there is that password hint. Set your password hint as the shared password. If you need our help on the RunSignup side, we can't see your password, so having that hint there as the password really helps for testing, and it helps remind you, because someone's not going to be able to see that hint unless they are logged in as a race director with access to that on the RunSignup side. Using QR codes with the check-in app, like I said, it's a great way to look up the participant and make sure it's the exact participant. and also to assign the bib without putting, conflating digits. So looking up a participant by the QR code, that QR code is mapped to their RunSignup registration ID. Just a note there, if you are building anything with an outside API, that's what you're calling. And assigning a bib number to a participant can be done by scanning the QR code on the bib with the bib number embedded. So the standard flow is either scan a registration QR code or type in a participant name to look them up, and then scan a bib number QR code or type in the bib number QR code to assign it. On the right, there's a little animation of assigning by typing. So some key settings for this, and kind of in the best practice space, it's best to require a bib number be assigned. It's best to auto show the camera if you're working with QR codes. It is good to show the giveaway if you are needing to mark what shirt size or whatever you're giving away. Allowing uncheck-ins is a good practice, but this gets into a space of how best to work through a packet pickup flow with dynamic assignment. And generally what I would recommend for that scenario is having your trained staff or maybe one or two key lead volunteers per shift able to do the more administrative tasks, meaning change information, meaning uncheck-in a participant, meaning swap their races, and then having the rest of the staff working just go through and assign bibs only. Bib validation, again, we're gonna kind of hammer validating bibs and preventing duplicate bibs. They're both settings that you can do. Validating bibs occurs on the RunSignup side. Preventing duplicate bibs can be set in the check-in app itself. They're both really important ways to protect yourself as the timer and your race from getting incorrect bib assignments. Race day rapid check-in. So this is kind of the fastest of the fast ways to do things while still keeping it very accurate. So race day check-in app and assigning the dynamic or just assigning bibs dynamically. Again, use the camera on the device to reduce typing errors. If you're using the rapid check-in method, it offers the ability to autosave after a user selected period of time, defaults to 5 seconds. But offering rapid check-ins is the best way to push those participants through in the 6 seconds like we talked about. And this is something that the largest events are adopting. So again, if you look on the right here, there's a GIF that goes through scanning the participant's ID there, and then scanning the bib code, and that goes to the auto confirm to check in. So that's slowed down so I can talk through it, but as you can see, that goes very quickly, and it goes very quickly without any error of it being not this particular Soren Larson or typing 250 instead of 1250. It also does use bib validation if that's set up, which it should be. And you can also use the flashlight of the device if you're working in a darker space there. So some best practices, again, QR codes, we're just gonna kind of keep hammering that. It is way more accurate than letting people type. And being able to use that registration ID, if sending out a pre-race email right before packet pickup, that includes that so that participants have that at the top of their inbox is a really good practice. Having a plan to address changes, dynamically assigning someone a bib does give them that bib number, but they may have other things that they need done. So having a plan for moving them out of the assignment line so that they get the best customer support that you can offer and that everybody in that line keeps moving. Focusing on customer service and focusing on training those volunteers is a really important part of this. And as you do that, making sure that you or someone who's well trained on the race's staff is able to kind of look over people's shoulders for the first couple check-ins. Once it starts rolling, it's really easy, and they've got that kind of almost muscle memory going through things. But if you're not there making sure that happens, there's a little bit of room for error. Another really good practice if you're doing dynamic assignment, especially if you're handing out bibs for a family or a group of people, notate the first name for each participant on the back of the bib you assign them. If it's Thanksgiving morning and a family of 4 goes and grabs all the bibs off the counter and they don't have the name on that, you could have some age group conflicts there. Some more best practices. Set up the bib validation and RunSignup. We give you 2 ranges per event that you're able to set for this. You don't necessarily need to have an end to the range, but it's a good practice. This is especially useful in making sure that people have enough characters in the bib numbers that they're assigning. So as you can see in the example here, anything over 1,000 can't be assigned for the 5K. And anything over, that's outside of the 1,001 to 2,000 range isn't able to be assigned for the 10K. And then on the far right there, you can see that there's feedback for a participant or for a volunteer trying to check someone in with a number that's out of range. Again, this is another reason why it's really good to put those guardrails on for the volunteers, but also to have someone on staff there to troubleshoot if they need to assign them 2005 for some strange reason. And that kind of speaks to having different presets and configurations in the race day check-in app set up. We don't need to dive into that now. We do have a lot of information out there about that. But more importantly, do real check-ins before packet pickup opens with your volunteers. You'll probably have a volunteer who's participating or whose friend or family member they're picking a bib up for at the end of their shift. Use one of those folks as a real example of checking people in. Have one of the early birds who shows up 2 hours before packet pickup opens. You can kind of have it both ways and give them what they want at the expense of them having to go slowly through the process so that people can see that. If you have relays or teams, again, use a separate preset and configuration or separate preset for them. And again, just, the best thing you can do here is make sure that everyone is well trained and understands what the ask is of them. All right, let's open the floor up. Are there any questions out there so far?
I would just maybe share, for those of you that want to be certified in the race day check-in app, we do have a certification class if you haven't completed it already. So definitely take advantage of that. But if you have any final questions, you can always type them in now if you wait a minute. Yeah, there's a question about are there best practices for bib assignment?
Yeah, best practices for bib assignment, really QR code. Having a QR code that looks up, if I'm understanding this question right, that looks up the participant and then a QR code on the bib is going to be the smoothest and most accurate. Otherwise, when you are assigning, it's always good to look on the confirmation page and then just speaking to that person. So, if Billy comes up and checks in, when I get to that last page, I write Billy on the back of the bib and say, "Thank you, Billy," as I hand it to them, or notating, Billy, you've got a medium for the shirt and handing that there. So both there's a recognition of the customer, but there's also kind of validation that they are who they say they are or who they think they're picking up for, and they have that opportunity to say, "Oh, no, that's not me," or "Oh, no, that's the wrong one there." Any reason why web and app check-in, they can both be used at the same time? Generally speaking, it's a lot easier to use phones and tablets because it frees your hands and it frees up a lot more space on the table. but you can certainly do both. Usually what I see is the admin person or the staff person is using a computer, and then the volunteers are on tablets and phones if you're splitting it up that way. The app, let's see, bulk assignment. If you're bulk assigning, you probably want to do that ahead of time using Bib Assignment in RunSignup. So you can certainly do that. Checking your workflow, going through the process that someone would, sorry, I should articulate what the questions are. What was meant by checking your workflow? Functionally walking up, just going through a check-in as if you were actually talking to a participant, saying, okay, opening the app, looking up the person either by QR code or typing in their name, and then assigning them a bib either by typing it in or scanning it, and just making sure that that looks the way you want it to, and that you're seeing the information that you would like to there. Let's see. They just kind of keep showing up there. Are volunteers reluctant to use their phones? That really depends on your audience. I've seen it both ways. Some people are much more comfortable using their own devices, other people less so. So it is good to have a plan for that. One thing in particular that's useful if you have older volunteers is providing the tablets, just because it's a little bit easier screen to read there. Bib numbering for check-in versus photo check-in. Photo is going to be more reliable because there's no room for error when it's looking up a QR code. The QR code maps to a bib number rather than you typing the bib number. Again, they're both going to get you to the same spot. One's a little bit faster than the other, but that does come down to preference and application, as long as the outcome is that the bib number in your hand is assigned to the participant either in front of you or that's being picked up for. You're good there. Please explain bib number and QR code for results. Sure. So the QR code scanning, if you have that QR code mapped to say bib 100 and you scan it to assign a bib, you can also use that to scan for results. The Race Day Check-in app has a results configuration and kiosk that you can go to that will display participants' results if they're posted on RunSignup. So you can be using that to look up participants' results after the race with the same devices. So functionally kind of two uses for one event, which tends to make race directors happy and is a really good engagement point after the race. What's the best way to handle race day registrations? Is there a difference depending on payment method, credit card, check, cash? Best way to handle race day registrations is to have participants sign up on their own phones in that space. Putting QR codes up that allow people to go to the registration page. You may want to set up a quick registration option or fast registration link from RunSignup that doesn't require participants to sign into their account, and that can cut out some of that registration flow. So that's a little bit faster. In particular, if you're at a Thanksgiving race and you really don't need as much information, you can do something like that. So having them use their phone and a saved credit card, we see more and more registrations are coming from Apple Pay or saved credit cards on devices is the best. And then having a way, like you said, looking for check or cash methods, having a dedicated spot for folks who are paying or registering in that way to come up and register in a little bit separate line, because that's going to slow down the flow. But you can set up a registration kiosk and require a password to pay in cash or check so that your staff are verifying that that has been paid. Let's see, there's a lot of questions there. Did I miss any there, Avery?
While he's looking through the final list, Soren, can you bring up your test race and go to the Bib stats area on the race RunSignup dashboard area? Yeah.
Checking stats?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So just to highlight again, there's sometimes when you need to, be looking at this information. It's good for planning next year in terms of your devices and all. But another tool that's out here for you timers is very important is that you can download assignments here. And so if for some reason you really want to look at per registration ID to Bib assignment, there are ways to do that download, and you can use that for various scoring use cases where you may need to update somebody's information or something, or just review it. So there is data downloads here available as a troubleshooting. Might want to check that out for your next event. And then again, looking at the statistics of how different volunteers handled check-ins on that day.
Mm-hmm. And while we're on this, I'm just gonna highlight Bib validation. So race day tools, Bib validation. This is a really important setting when you're using dynamic assignment. So do keep this in mind. Pardon me. Let's see. So Marty brought up a good point here that if you have a t-shirt cutoff date, adding the t-shirt size or the giveaway option size as part of that check-in process is a really good way to know who's got a guaranteed size versus the too late to guarantee. So there's a lot of other use cases there that kind of expand out into this. Let's see, we did have a question here. Can you use barcodes and barcode readers with laptops versus QR codes? Most USB readers work as a keyboard to laptops. So if it works with that device for that, yes, or you can type them in as well. Once you get into that space, test. Same with what I said earlier about testing your workflow. Make sure that that works and make sure that works consistently, because it's not necessarily you using it, but it is a volunteer. And so you want to make sure that's something you can articulate clearly to them, and that they can follow that flow easily, and that they know what to do if that barcode scanner stops working for some reason. Let's see. I think I've covered all of those questions there. Let's see. Can you require Bib assignment upon check-in for certain race segments, e.g. required for 5K and 10K and not for walkers? Yes, that kind of speaks to presets and configurations. You can have a different preset for the walking event than you have for the 5K running event. And then you just set up configuration that is using the non-required preset for the walking event. Let's see. What about no bibs? Yes, you can skip bib requirement. Any ideas? Let me see. I experimented with t-shirt handout ideas, like making an internal question called t-shirt picked up with a checkbox, and then making a preset so that we have a separate table. That is a really good creative option for doing that. Just a reminder, with the check-in app, you have the ability to choose what questions you see and what questions responses can be edited. So creating an internal question, which is one that's only viewable on the back end of RunSignup, that indicates whether or not someone has picked up their shirt yet, and then allowing that question's response to be edited would be a way to kind of validate if a shirt is picked up, if that's a different station or workflow for your specific race. So Melanie, I think that's actually a really smart use of the check-in app there.
Let's chime in on that too. One step further you can take it, if you're not already doing this, Melanie, is to change the lookup result. So what happens when you scan someone to go directly to the update participant screen. So then you don't see that page where it has the check-in button, because you mentioned it's awkward because that's there. If you make that change, it will just say, okay, there's Soren, and I'm going to go right to the screen where I can update his t-shirt response.
And then you're updating the participants' information versus checking them in. If you have a kids run where everyone has the same bib number and you want to check them in, you can just not require the bib number on that to still be able to check them in. If you did want to give them a unique number, that's going to really depend on your workflow, but you can just either skip that or make it not required. But if it is a timed event, you almost always want to make that required piece there. No bib events. If you had events without bibs, again, yeah, you don't need to require a bib number for participants to be checked in, or speaking to the shirt assignment piece, to have information updated. All right. If there's no more questions, just a reminder to set up and test everything well ahead of race day, and have a great rest of your day.